talk about whenever we go to these conferences is we've been talking about ROI quite a bit, return on ad spend, ROI. A few years ago, maybe about 10 years ago plus, paid marketers were the folks sitting in the corner, clicking away, building out campaigns, getting leads. That was it. That was your job. Job is done, right? But since then, we've had the advent of social. With social, Facebook actually for the first time, I think this is the only time I've ever seen Google follow Facebook on the ad side. Facebook launched something called custom audiences. The ability to upload a list of email addresses and find those people on Facebook to target them with ads, for example. What that unlocked was the ability for us as marketers on the paid ad side to actually target people at every single stage of the decision-making cycle. And so over the years, we've moved further down the funnel. I think it's always that Spider-Man reference, right? Of like, with great power comes great responsibility, I think is what they said. But the idea here is as marketers, in the last 7 years, the premise of AdStage, for example, hasn't changed. We started the company to help you understand which ad channel is performing better or worse. And 7 years ago, you actually didn't have the access down to down funnel metrics as you do now. And so we do now. So therefore, we have to go further down the funnel and prove out our efforts. We're responsible to do that because it's no longer OK to say, well, I don't have access to anything beyond clicks and impressions. That just doesn't work anymore, right? And beyond that, we actually have access to what we've showed before, which is pipeline, revenue, close-won deals, and contracts out. So let's just go through a really quick example of this. So this is what you used to look at. You'd see spend. You even see MQLs here, and you see CPL, cost per lead, right? And you can see two different channels. You can see Facebook versus LinkedIn ads. And the very easy conclusion to draw here would be invest more on Facebook and invest less on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's known for being really expensive. You're getting way more MQLs on Facebook for a cheaper CPL. So of course you should invest in Facebook. But we're all really smart marketers, and we know that if and when we actually can connect further down the funnel, more often than not, this picture changes. I think one of the craziest stats, the fellow from Google had mentioned was that I think it was 40% of marketers marketers who are connecting data to the CRM on their advertising side increase their budgets by about 40% or something like that, which is crazy because they can prove this story just like this. You can actually prove that, in fact, LinkedIn's the better investment and Facebook's not. It doesn't matter that Facebook drives vanity metrics for me. None of us here care about vanity metrics, so we spoke about all day. And then you can have a really easy conversation about budget, right? I can directly tell you what $1 of paid ads gets me in terms of return. And it's actually pretty simple math when you have these systems set up and put in place properly. So another really kind of tactical idea here, but this jumps into a lot of the different concepts we spoke about. So a lot of us here grew up in the SEM world when we came to advertising. Social is fairly new. And we always used to have our top of funnel keywords that we were targeting. We were targeting people to come to our site, become a lead. But just like we're aligning our actual targeting of our ad campaigns and even the measurement of our ad campaigns, we can start to build out new initiatives, even at the keyword level, to start adding things like demo, buy now, reviews. These are down funnel keywords, right? These are keywords when you're further along in the decision-making cycle. And so actually having your campaigns separated out by these different levels of commitment that you have in the buying cycle is pretty critical. And you can do this fundamentally at the very groundwork level of targeting, which is keywords for Google. Right? I also mentioned that you have retargeting. So how many folks here that are running paid are using retargeting often or every day pretty much? A lot. So on the retargeting side, we know that we've actually, we've had these new advents. So I mentioned Facebook custom audiences. You can put a website pixel on your site. It'll track who's coming to your site. It'll target them directly. That's your standard retargeting. You can even upload first-party data. But what's amazing is in your CRM, we all have these different stages of opportunity, right? Maybe cold, warm, contract out, negotiation, closed. Every single one of those has a list. You take those lists, you upload them as separate custom audiences, and you can actually send now specific messaging on the ad networks for those given users that are at that specific decision-making cycle. And what you can do is you can actually force function them through that by, as they get to the next stage, you can exclude them from the previous stage, right? So you can actually build out this forcing function using retargeting on the digital ad side to get people through this system at the different sales stages. Cool. So just to finish up, a couple of different tools. So the vast majority of us here are starting, a lot of people have been using DMPs for a long time when it comes to measuring ad effectiveness. But DMPs don't really do the full job. DMPs really were focused on the programmatic side or the display side. In advertising, there's always like 3 words to say the same thing and a bunch of different acronyms. But essentially, programmatic meaning display, so not really native advertising or PPC. Right? And that's where we're starting to see a proliferation to these analytics tools. You see a bunch of ad tech tools, a bunch of MarTech tools, because now we have different systems in place. And they have to integrate. and they have to be able to show us true effectiveness. And that's something that Salesforce has been, Salesforce, I think, recently acquired MuleSoft, which is an API company. They acquired Datorama. And all of these things are trying to tool together to create some sort of MarTech stack that we can combine and really understand the true effectiveness, right, on the digital advertising side. Google, I think we didn't really mention this, but Google has been really pushing aggressively in terms of their integrations into the CRM. So they actually have a direct connection to Salesforce. Right? And with that direct connection, just in the Google ecosystem, and that's the big challenge, is it's always inside of Google's ecosystem. But they do have the ability now to break into the CRM. And I think they briefly, the fellow briefly touched on this. But this is still really challenging. And this is the conversation that I urge many of you guys to have, whether you're an agency like Business Online, whether you're direct inside of a company. You have to start having these conversations. I think agencies are probably the ones that are at biggest risk because they have to then get access to the client's database system. Versus in-house teams, you guys have to convince sales to let you into it, which is also very challenging. So I'll skip that, and then this is just that last piece that I wanted to mention and also put up for you guys. But this is probably one of the biggest advents for us as B2B marketers that we've gotten in the last couple of years when it comes to the digital advertising side. So well beyond analytics, well beyond measurement, it's been this kind of this forcing function where at every single step of the way, no longer are we sitting in a corner building an ad campaign just for lead generation, but we can effectively advertise different messaging, different content, different inflection points at every single step of the decision-making cycle. And we have the responsibility to do it.